Hey everybody, my name is Chris Nedza and I am the founder of Easihair, and we're a company that was purchased by Mindbody earlier this year. And we were the leading employee engagement and data analytics company in the industry. And basically we took the data and made it actionable. And today I'm super duper excited because we're going to be talking with Lance Courtney, a super duper smart guy, good friend of mine. And Lance is the vice president and managing partner of Easihair Pro and an incredible hair extension company. But I told Lance we're going to drop the VP and just go with the managing partner because he's a superstar, and he is. But the other thing about Lance is you'll see him speaking at all kinds of different events. He really knows this industry super duper well. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of like what has happened, not with preparing for COVID, but what are the trends that are causing us to change in the salon industry, to change their habits and their behaviors, because it has certainly changed the rules of the game. I mean,
absolutely.
Right when you say that, Lance?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's easy to look at the negative. Nobody would have ever asked for a challenge like this. But at this point in the journey, the conversation has gone from what now to what next. And as states are beginning to open, you're in Georgia, you were one of the first states to open 4 weeks ago. And
right.
Other states are preparing to open. Everybody realizes that they are returning to the salon, but they're not returning to the same world, and their customers are not returning to the same world. So what looks like a constraint, within every obstacle, there's always an opportunity. And behind every opportunity, there's always an obligation. And so I think as an industry, we have an obligation to actually look at the silver lining within an otherwise somewhat negative situation, a setback. But the idea is to make your comeback much greater than your setback. And now we just go into strategy. That's what this is about.
That's right. And we're going to give you about 8 tips. I don't know if the tips are the really kind of like insight.
Best practices.
Yeah, well, this is what we see, or at least this is what I see. I mean, I talk to salon owners all over the world. We get data from all over the place, and these are some trends that I'm seeing, and Lance and I are going to talk about it. So one thing that we would both agree on is the salon industry margins were razor thin before COVID, right?
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
think
The majority. No, actually now everyone's looking at how do we make up for, 3 months worth of backlog revenue. And you're right. Even pre-COVID, we did a cash flow camp with, 75 salon owners. And it's interesting to note that 85% of salons, as it stands, do not make a profit when it comes to services.
Wow.
And so what this has caused us to do, if anything, is really fast track the importance of understanding and knowing your numbers intimately. I mean, here's what drives human behavior, right? The avoidance of pain and the seeking of pleasure, pain and pleasure, right? This is the carrot stick thing. And people are usually only willing to take on a new habit, behavior, or seek a new action in order to avoid pain that they might be present to, or to gain a reward. The whole entire world is in this pain phase. And if anything, it forces people to really look at the numbers. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business.
So tip number one, or trend number one, is numbers were important before, but they are uber important now. I mean, absolutely understanding your numbers. And there's one number, at Easihair, we've often talked about 5 power metrics, average ticket, there's a retail metric, stuff like that. But there's a new metric that we talked about before. It's called productivity, that I think it now is such an important metric. And when I talk about productivity, I'm talking about how much revenue per hour you're generating per staff person, right? So
absolutely.
What do you think about that, Lance? I mean,
well, time more than anything. I've said this for years, for the past 5 years, but it's never been more punctuated right now. Time is the new currency. Earlier this morning, because all I do is talk to salon owners day in, day out, nonstop. and I was speaking to a 5-location salon out west, and everybody's dealing with certain constraints, occupancy limitations.
Right.
Whether we agree with them or we don't agree with them, some of them don't necessarily make sense. 10 people in a building, no more, even though a building might be 3,500 square feet. Nonetheless, you're dealing with time constraints. And how are you going to accommodate all of these customers? And how are you going to accommodate your team members in such a way where you can leverage a negative and really turn a negative into a positive? So the first step is really knowing your metrics, knowing your KPIs, your key performance indicators. And then once you intimately know those numbers, how can you strategize and execute against a plan that allows you to leverage against a negative constraint and turn it into a positive? And rate per hour is huge, because if you're working with a limited number of finite hours, which everybody always has, but now more than ever, time is that currency, and time is the real estate, time is everything, and time and space, right? The space-time continuum. So if you're dealing with that limitation, what can you do to focus on your highest earning salon services? And in fact, can I share a quick optic?
Absolutely.
So time is money, and that's never been more true than right now. Now, in the salon, the most requested color service typically happens to be a balayage. It typically takes a hairdresser about 2 hours to perform this particular service. Now, let's say they're very, very good at it. Let's say it's an hour and a half. Here's a great example of what we need to do and what hairdressers in this industry needs to do in order to really strategize and look at how they're going to maximize their rate per hour. So let's have a little boxing match. We're going to have hair color versus tape and hair extensions, right?
Right.
Now, in one corner, we have hair color weighing in, and we're going to look at rate per minute. We're going to have hair color weighing in at $150, taking a minimum of 90 minutes to perform. So the rate per minute on this is $1.67. In the other corner, we have tape and hair extensions weighing in at $250. We're talking a one-box, 15-minute transformation, right? Gives you volume. You can do color instead of balayage. You can do balayage, right? $16.67 per minute. So rate per hour is the difference between 100 per hour versus 1,000 per hour. Now you tell me, you're a hairdresser who's been in quarantine, and for 2.5 months, you're about to go back to work. You're working with a finite number of hours, with a finite number of people that you can serve in the building. And I haven't talked to a single salon owner or hairdresser in the industry who is double booking and working with an assistant anymore because of these constraints. So you have a choice. You can do cuts and colors all day long, or you can look to leverage that time and focus on your higher earning salon services. The interesting thing is, not only in this example would you be generating 10 times more, 1,000 an hour, but you also have a built-in pre-book, right? Because time is important.
Well,
and you have a built-in retail sale.
Let me back up 1 second just so our audience is kind of getting where you're coming from. I mean, it's fantastic, right? So the first thing you need to understand is, what are your total costs? How much does it cost you for rent, utilities,
Yes.
all your front desk, all of your costs? Take that number, and now you've got to divide that between how many hours in a day that you operate, and that tells you what your cost per hour is going to be. So if you know that, this is why people go broke doing haircuts, because you can do a haircut for $50. It may take you an hour, and your total loaded in cost may be $75 an hour. You can lose money every time you do a haircut. And that's if you're staffed and you've got all kinds of, there's no pre-COVID stuff or COVID stuff going on. Now you have to be super duper, like, I've used that word like 15 times. I got to drop super duper.
Super duper?
Super duper. Yeah, we're going to drop that one. But now you have to be super focused on understanding how much revenue per hour you need to generate. And that will help dictate what type of services you offer. And it'll indicate, and it'll help you train your staff on what services they should be talking about. So I love your illustration. It's perfect because balayage is not cheap. And not every customer is going to be doing hair extensions or taping extensions. However, you better have a blend because your average revenue per hour in order to survive has got to be your total cost plus a margin, or you won't be in business. I mean, it's just fact of the matter. And it's never been more important than today.
I want to add something to that. You know, one of the things that we discuss at Cash Flow Camp is the idea of, you know, revenue is money in, right? But revenue and profit are totally different things. So you've got to know, okay, your money in, increasing the amount of revenue, money that comes in, decreasing the amount of potential expenses, that's money out, in order to manage and control the money left over. Money in, money out, money left over. But first, yeah, you're absolutely right. Doing a detailed analysis and inventory of what your cost to run that business is, rate per hour, whether you're a 10 location salon or you're just a salon with 10 people or less.
Yeah, so I want to throw out two more concepts that, okay, these are debatable. All right, some people are going to go, what? And here's the first one. If you know you've got to have, you cannot service the same number of customers post-COVID. It's just, you've got limitation because of, you know, space, what do you call it? Social distancing, right? So I want to throw out the concept of HQC, your high quality customers. So based on the exam, you know, if I can't see every one of my customers, Lance, which customers do I want to approach and do I want in, and who can I afford to service? Which ones? The ones that are doing.
Oh, yes. Well, you've got to focus on, you know, here's what we call it, you know, there's a process that we go through at camp, and it's called your ideal client vision statement. And so I've always joked that there's two types of clients, Chris. You know, you have the type of client that lights up the room when they walk into it, and then you have the other type of client. They light up the room when they walk out of it, right? So time is precious. Focus on first identifying the first type, then which of your clients are doing multiple services? Which of your clients are coming in at least 8 to 10 times a year, buying retail, et cetera, and so on. Focus on those because, you know.
Let me ask you a question. How many, in your experience of consulting and being in the industry, how many salon owners actually study their numbers and their customers like that segment their customers and know who their most valuable customers are? Do you know very many?
No. I would say it's less than 20% that actually take a good look at market segmentation in this way and then start crafting. And listen, as a hairdresser, you might be listening to this and going, well, I can't control who shows up on my books and who doesn't show up on my books. Right? And that might be the case. But what you can do is start to take inventory of the people that you currently serve and then begin focusing on them and pre-booking them. I mean, time is precious right now, and the idea of what it used to look like, the idea of walk-ins don't exist anymore, not in the traditional sense. So what this does is it gives, the silver lining is it gives hairdressers the opportunity to reach out and schedule a virtual consultation with their guests in order to determine their needs, their challenges, etc., prescribe whatever whatever services and treatments they're going to need in advance, in addition to taking inventory of their retail, what they might almost be out of at home, and have all of that stuff ready to go. So for the bottom 80% of people who've struggled pre-COVID, this now, because it is a constraint. You use the word limitation. I like looking at it as a constraint. And the neat thing is with a constraint, the silver lining to that constraint is it gives the hairdresser control.
So, so HQC is know your high quality customer. And by the way, I think the point of sale systems have to really provide the marketing segmentation tools so that you can segment who is your top customer, and you've got to be able to market to them. You know, I love Mindbody because we have tools like that, but you know, whatever. it is no, I mean, it's so important now. And I want to do this, the other HQ, which is a high quality employee.
Well, the interesting thing is, and I want to say this before we shift to that high quality employee, and I think what I'm going to share with you is a great transition into high quality employee from high quality customer.
Yep.
Because there's, how do you get a high quality customer? Do they just fall from the sky? High quality customers, the interesting thing about high quality customers is most of them are converted, not recruited. What does that mean? Well, let me give you just this very quick example here. Hang on for a moment. I'm just going to exit this full screen. And Chris, I think this is going to be a great transition into where you're going. So you were talking about high quality customers. Well, I was saying high quality customers, where do they come from? They just don't fall from the sky. In our experience, what we've seen is most high quality customers are actually converted, not recruited, right? And the people who serve high quality customers are quite often, which I think is your next point, high quality employees. So here's something to look at in this example. Let's say you have, in this example, 4 people, 4 hairdressers. They all charge $50 a haircut and they service 5 customers today, right? At the end of the day, Becky rings up $250, Bobby rings up $375, Megan rings up $780 for the day, and Ashley totals out at $425. So if you had to give a gold medal to one of these 4, it would obviously be Megan. There's a few questions that we have to ask. Is Megan getting better clients than Becky? See, this transitions into what a high quality employee happens to be.
You are so right. Because my guess, let me ask you this. My guess is, although there may be days that Becky does better than Megan, in general, the trend is Megan is generally the higher performer day in and day out, correct?
Yes. So now, absolutely. So, and you know, success leaves clues, just like failure. So what is Megan doing that Becky's not doing? I mean, the opportunity is equal, results are not. So what's Megan doing? Well, she's probably doing an in-depth consultation. She's probably doing a virtual consultation, in this case, anywhere between 48 to 72 hours before her customers arrive in order to determine their needs, their challenges, their wants, their desires. Right. So she's better prepared. And what is Becky doing? Becky's doing whatever shows up on the books. This is an indication of somebody who's really not doing an in-depth consultation in advance of the service. And here is where the rubber meets the road. How many more days does Becky have to work in order to generate the same revenue that Megan's bringing in?
At least.
Well, she has 3+.
Yeah.
Right? 3+. And with so many people, and the reality is you have a lot of hairdressers who are, during this time, have become, you know, homeschool teachers. And in certain places, you might be a salon owner whose team has small children that have not gone back to school. So how much more important, not only to the client, but to you and your team, is the idea of time. See, Megan can work one day and do 3 times as much as Becky and still have time to spend with her family. So there is an impact. There's always a consequence. There's always a reward. And I think where you're going with this idea of high quality employees is those premium spaces that are going to book up as salons are now stretching their hours to accommodate people in the post-COVID world, as salons are now extending their days to 7 days a week. There are certain high traffic times within a salon, and there are certain low traffic times. And there will be, because hair grows, gravity pulls, and things will go like this. To whom are you going to assign your peak hours? Are you going to give your peak hours to Becky, who's going to do the bare minimum? Or are you going to give your peak hours to somebody like Ashley or Megan? And I think this is the lens that everybody has to start looking at things through as we emerge from this.
Yeah, no, totally. I absolutely agree with you. It's sort of, I know some people that watch this may say, well, that's really heartless. It's not. It's your job as a leader to let people know what's possible and then to coach them along so that they can do it. I mean, the fact of the matter is that every person that's a top performer stylist, every one of them, I guarantee you, is disciplined in that they do their homework in advance. They know who's coming. They know what they've done.
Yes.
They know what they've purchased. They're educating that customer. They're recommending, the product and the services, and they're booking them for their next appointment. I mean, it's not rocket science, but you have to be disciplined. And as a leader, you've got to teach these people how to do that. And if you're a stylist, you owe it to the owner to give your very, very best. I mean, what I started with is margins are razor thin. It's difficult out there. So we have to all row together. Couple other things, because we're going to run out of time. On time is very important today. So what I mean by on time, not only the staff person, but the customer. Like we don't have, like most salons, you said it, Lance, are not double booking. So it is a linear progression. You get a customer, They have to come in, they have to leave, the next one comes in, and stagger shifts are happening. So I would suggest that people do a much better job of communicating. Please, customer, be on time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not only that, but because of these constraints that we're looking at, and a lot of salons are already doing this, the ones who are open, is they're requesting that the customer text the salon when they arrive in order to make sure that the rotation isn't breaking any of the occupancy limitation mandates. Yeah. And so I couldn't agree with you more. And it further just punctuates and underscores the importance of considering a virtual consultation before the visit. Because if you're doing this and you're literally, and look, here's the elephant in the room. If you do not do a virtual consultation, you are not going to be as expeditious with your time, and you're going to spend the first 30 minutes of that first appointment talking about all things COVID related, which is not why they are there. So if you take the time and diligently go, well, 48, 72 hours before that appointment, you schedule a virtual consultation with the client, you do a 1-minute check-in, health and well-being, how they're doing, a little empathy goes a long way, followed by an in-depth consultation with them. What you can do, Chris, is you can come to agreement on all the things that you're going to need to do when they arrive for their in-person, in-salon appointment. And then you can say hello and begin executing against that plan.
Yep. And so that's my next point that I think is going to be a big trend. It's that we are in a high touch industry, and everything that we can do low touch, we have to. So you just said it, like virtual consultations. I know that we've got technology and software that you can do all your uptake forms. You can do all your waivers. All that stuff could be done before they walk in. So everything that you can do that doesn't require touch, you need to do, like low touch.
Yes, in advance. And, I mean, I'm in California. It doesn't look like we're going to be open for quite some time. I think New York and California are going to be the holdouts. But the interesting thing is, and here's the difference between ordinary and extraordinary, at least as an example. So, I had Robert Cromians as a guest on my live last week, and we've been doing trainings with his team. And the interesting thing is this week, we spent over an hour and a half with his entire team talking about how you lead, guide, and direct a virtual consultation, from the very opening line to the transition to the actual consultation paths that we're using, to how you wrap it up, how you prepare the client, all of these things. And here's the interesting thing. They haven't opened yet. They haven't reopened yet. And there's no plans in the state of California to reopen for quite some time. But what they're doing now is going to prepare them to make their comeback greater than their setback. And that's where everybody should be focused. How do I leverage time, and how do I turn a negative into a positive?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Robert, because I love Robert. Robert Cromians has been such a good friend of ours. He's been at Zizor promoter, fanatic, friend. I love Robert. So
Yeah.
from all the way, Mary and Robert, just amazing people. Two other things that I want to hit. And this is just, at Zizor, we spent so much time comparing this year over last year. The app is designed for that. Like I can quickly see how am I doing this year versus last year. We built a new feature that's available. And I think this is even more important to see this week versus last week, this month versus last month. You have to know if you're making improvements. So if you don't have Zizor, that's fine. Make sure you're looking at your period comparisons of this period versus last period and make it last week, last month. Because your year is completely messed up because of COVID. You can't compare. So you need to be able to do that. And then the final one is understanding the benchmarks. I think that's going to be even more critical, especially we're into COVID. You don't really know what's possible. I mean, the world is upside down. I mean, what's an average ticket supposed to be in COVID world? I don't know what it's supposed to be, but the data will tell you what's possible, what your average ticket is. You better understand those benchmarks. Comment on that.
I think it's great that you've now given people the opportunity to compare week by week, because I think that is comparing it against those shorter time periods gives them an opportunity to make those necessary improvements, which I think is fantastic. But the interesting thing is one thing that hasn't shifted or changed, in order to perform at the top 1% in this industry, your average service ticket should come in at 3 times more than your base price. So example, if you charge, and let's piggyback off the previous example in the optics. Let's say you charge $50 a haircut.
Right.
So to perform according to performance standards at the highest 1%, your average service ticket would have to average 150 or more per guest. To be in the top 10%, your average service ticket would have to be double your haircut price. So it would be 100. And then above average would be, 1.5, so 75. And so I think that's a good measuring stick for people to look at, because obviously if you're only doing slightly above whatever your base price is, and your base price would be the service that you do the most of,
right.
What you're not doing most likely is a consultation, because I can tell you this, most clients have more than just one particular challenge. Right? They have a lot of challenge with their hair, their style, the texture, color, volume, length. And that's why, when we look at Easihair Pro, we always make 3 promises in our education. And although people know us as a hair extension company, we're primarily, number 1, an education company first, and then manufacturing company second. And so we make 3 unique promises every time we do an education. Today, we're going to increase your service ticket. We're going to increase your retail ticket and increase your pre-booking, in addition to a couple other promises. And we guarantee it. I don't know too many other manufacturers that can do that, but I'm not saying that to pat ourselves on the back. We do that because our mission is creating successful salon professionals. And if you can't measure the success, you can't manage the success. So everything that we do has got to be more than fluff and puff. It has to be measurable.
All right. So Lance, you're super... very, very smart person. So I'm going to throw a curveball at you.
Okay.
Because we're done. But what is give me a life quote or a quote that you cling on to.
Klingon, as in Star Trek Klingons?
Yeah.
Give
me a life quote or a couple quotes that are just some wise quotes that are truism. I'll give you one of mine, and I think it's true for this period of time. And that is, this goes for salons, this goes for businesses, this goes for stylists, for anybody. Failing to plan is like planning to fail. That's one of mine.
No, absolutely. I love that. That's a great truism. I'll throw out some original Lanceisms, if you were. Because life, L-I-F-E, living inspired, fulfilled, and energized, life is part what you choose to remember, combined with what you choose to forget, coupled with what you choose to embrace. And that is a moment by moment choice. Everybody, if numbers tell us what emotions will not, and box office numbers tell us what, everybody's generally interested in, the biggest by far measurable genre of film happens to be superhero movies, right?
Right.
Everyone's fascinated with superheroes, and everyone's probably had the conversation, hey, if you had a superpower, what would it be? Would it, people say, oh, I would fly or control time or that. And there's always somebody a little bit creepy in the room that says I would be invisible. But, what people tend to forget is, as human beings, we already have a superpower. And that superpower is the ability to choose, because we're human beings, not cat, dog, or kangaroo beings. The power to choose. Think about this. An ant, dog, cat, kangaroo, I don't know why I keep going to kangaroo. They just can't wake up one day and decide, hey, I don't feel like being an ant anymore. I want to be a hairdresser. The interesting thing about being humans is the being. You get to choose how you be. And that choice is our superpower, moment by moment, day by day. There's a great line at the end of the film, A Flight from Death, A Quest for Mortality. And the line ends with the film, everything has been figured out except how to live. So perhaps the better question is not what do we do about death, right? Death is inevitable. What do we do about life? Life is made up of these individual moments that we create. So it's up to us to ensure that these moments that we create are interconnected, vital, and grand to create a masterpiece of life, one that we would willingly live again and again throughout all of eternity.
So,
So
then you're with me. You're with me then. YOLO, you only live once, is absolutely fake. It's false. You only die once. You live every day. So
you live every single day. Well, the last line of that is, this is what we can strive for. And I think it's in the striving that we get an opportunity to rise to the challenge. Listen, human beings are resilient, right? We've had H1N1, we've had, the Spanish flu, we've had all kinds of things that we have endured, and we will rise above this. We will rise above this, and it's up to us to choose right now to rise above this and come out better instead of coming out bitter. And it doesn't mean or negate that the challenge isn't real. It's absolutely real. However, what are you going to do to rise to the occasion and really activate the superpower that we have? And I think the key to rising above the storm is finding peace in the eye of the storm. We don't have a clear line of sight. We don't have a vaccine. There's a lot of things that we don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty. And one of the 6 basic human needs is certainty. But in times of uncertainty, what we can do is find that peace in the eye of the storm, like the eagle who rises above the storm. And how you get there is a daily gratitude practice. Yeah. If everyone took inventory of the things that they did have, that they had to be grateful for, what it does is it really shifts your serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine level in your body. You have a biological shift, right? And sometimes it takes a physical shift. Run around the block, get on the bike, do something, right? But don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't feel sorry for yourself.
Lance, Courtney, it has been a joy to be with you today. Every time I talk to you, it's like, it's awesome. It's got a little bit of a Zen, enthusiastic, go get them thing. So thank you, Lance, for spending the day with me. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. I can't wait to go lights on, doors open across the nation. And if anybody needs resources, if it's PPE or strategy, we have a COVID resource page on easyhairpro.com. That's EASIHAIRPRO.com. There's a COVID resource page, lots of stuff right down to state mandates, what's required, et cetera. It gets updated 3 times a week. And We're not doing that because that's our core competency. We're doing this because our mission is creating successful salon professionals and getting you to go lights on, doors open, as fast, furious, and safe as possible. So thank you very much, Chris, and thank you, Mindbody, for having me on today. It's been a pleasure and it's been a blast.
Awesome.